Hello again, I'm Larry Hamilton and welcome to my painting channel. Thank you for watching. Today we're going to work on an oil painting that will be completed in our September 18th oil painting class. It's a scene, a fall landscape. It's actually a landscape that's not necessarily a fall, but we're going to make it a fall scene. We're going to paint some trees, rocks, and water, some of my favorite subjects, and we're going to do it today on 11 by 14 canvas that's already toned with some gray gesso. We're going to be using the Bob Ross brushes and with a couple added brushes that I have in there, a filbert that I use pretty frequently. Also the Bob Ross paints, we'll be using those. I have those on my vertical glass palette, as you can see here, and a couple of them are running a little bit down the canvas or down the palette because they're have more oil in them than others. Most of Bob Ross paints are fairly thick and don't run on the palette when I put them on there, but have a couple of them that we'll deal with it. So our painting today, I have a sketch completed on my canvas here, as you can see. I'll show you a photo of it also, of the painting that the photograph that we're painting from. And I've also completed a sort of a value map, and you see them on the top of the easel here. The photograph is here and the value map is over there, so I can constantly refer to those. The value map is really just used to help me remember the values of the sky are going to be fairly light. The values of the middle ground here in this area are going to be dark in the middle, and the values of the foreground are going to be sort of a mid-tone. So it just kind of helps me keep the painting into three types of values, and it usually makes a nicer painting if you can divide it into blocks that have a value like dark, mid-value, and light. So without anything else, let me go through the paints very quickly here, just to remind you what the names of these paints are. You probably already know if you've watched my videos, but I'll go through them here. We have titanium white, we have phthalo blue, we have Prussian blue that has started running down my easel, or down my palette here. I've stopped it from running, I think. Midnight black, we have Van Dyke brown, dark sienna, alizarin crimson, sap green, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, Indian yellow, and bright red. I also have over here an ultramarine violet that I've added, which is not part of the standard Bob Ross palette, but I added it to give me some additional colors that help me get some shadows and that sort of thing. So anyway, without more of my talking, let's get going on this thing. I'll zoom in here and try to get the canvas centered here properly so you can see it without cutting off any of it. You can see my sketch. Sketch is actually done with it's called a white charcoal pencil. Since I have a gray gesso on here, I can't do it in the white shows up very well on the gray gesso, I want to say. And as usual, we're going to use a little bit of liquid white to paint in some of the sky and maybe a little bit in the water to help us get some of the paint moving. So I'm going to use my 1-inch landscape brush, and I have a little paper plate here with some of the liquid white on it. So let's just get going on this thing and make sure we've got enough on there that we can get the paint moving. I'm just going to put this down to about where the sort of the background or middle ground comes in this painting, and just a light coating, nothing very heavy here. We have a little water that goes back in this area right here. You might have noticed that on the original photograph. So I'm going to flip a little liquid white in here just to have it. It also shows up over here, a little bit of water between these trees. And then, of course, we have a lot of the foreground has water in it here. So I'm going to put a little bit of this liquid white in here as well. So we'll have a lot of the canvas with liquid white on it, but we're leaving some areas out so we can still see the sketch and still see the where the main objects go. This liquid white really helps us get paint movement, helps us get nice blends of the paint. It helps us get the water and the reflections looking really nice because the way it thins down the paint. Rocks in here, rocks back there, nice tree, and some other bigger rocks floating back there. So this is going to be all water and reflections in the foreground. Sky up here, and a little bit of water here in the middle ground, if you will. All right, that's enough of the liquid white. So you can already see the outline of some of the painting here. And we're going to start with the sky as usual. Don't have to start with the sky, but I just kind of like to do it to get it in. And so we'll start with a little bit of phthalo blue here. Not much. It's really a potent color. I want to lighten it up. Keep plenty of white in it. There's white on the canvas, of course, with this liquid white. Up here, we'll just really put in a light coating of this. It takes a while to dry. If those of you who've used this liquid white, you know when you put it on the canvas, it takes a while to dry and leaves the edges kind of moist, and you have to work with it a little bit to keep it from getting it all over you when you carry these canvases around. I'm just going to move in some little darker color here and there. Maybe put in a touch of alizarin crimson, which helps give us a little bit of background. It looks like it's sort of in the distance coming down toward the horizon. And it adds another color in there that we can kind of blend that sky. So it's always a good idea to kind of darken the colors, the corners of the canvas if you can, just as a way of reminding the viewer that you want them to stay inside the painting boundaries. You don't want them to go wandering off the corners. So much of this painting is about trying to direct and control the viewer's eye. Keep them in the painting. Don't let them wander off. And little darker corners help. Usually the sky is darker at the top anyway. When you look at a sky in a painting, it kind of fades down to a lighter color as it gets down toward the horizon or to the top of a mountain or the background, whatever that may be. That's really about all I want to do right there for the sky. Put in a few more dark spots here and there to help it look like there's some clouds floating around. The blues will sort of paint around the clouds and give us some other colors in there. All right, we're going to have some of these blues and other stuff reflecting down in here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time putting it down here, but just to kind of clean out my brush a little bit, I'll put a few blues. This will be actually darker. It's going to be more of a lavender and gray color down here. But just get something on there to help. So it's not all liquid white. The liquid white, if you just leave it pure liquid white on there, it takes forever to dry, and it's not a good final painting surface. You want to have something over it. You want to have some sort of paint over this liquid white. And a little bit in there. All right, that's enough. Okay, so now we have our sky in, and we're ready to sort of work on these trees that are in the middle ground, or I guess the background of this painting, you'd call it. Clean out my brush here, get some of that liquid white out, get some of that paint out of there. Okay, I'm going to grab my filbert now and switch to it for some of these background trees. Filbert is this brush that sort of has some rounded edges on it. This is a number 10 filbert from Dick Blick. So these trees in the background are a interesting green. I said it was going to be a fall scene, but some of these trees many of them are still green. And with the light shining on it, the sun shining on it, we have some very nice looking highlights on these trees. So I'm just going to put in some put a little blue in this. I'm using sap green and a little bit of cad yellow. And I'm just taking this filbert and just sort of pushing up. Push it up into the sky, leave the top edge fuzzy. Give ourselves maybe you heard me talk about a melodic or a graceful line, so you have some undulation in these trees. It may not exactly reflect what the photograph shows, but the photograph is really here to give us some ideas and not to make us a slave to the photograph. If you want to paint the photograph in a very detailed and accurate way, you might as well not be doing oil painting. You might as well just take a photograph and forget it. That's my opinion. Some people like to render their paintings to look identical to a photograph, see how closely they can make them look. But I tend to like to use the photograph as a guideline and something that you can use to give you good ideas, but not to be slavishly following. I'm adding a little bit of bright red into this green to sort of gray the green down. The green is very, very strong in some of these areas, but I want to get a good mixture of color. So if you see what I'm doing here, I'm just using this brush and just pushing up and getting a good mix of colors here. Putting some blue, so cad yellow, sap green, bright red, and I'm getting these sort of some grays and a little bit of browns in there. Pick up a little more red, you probably get a little more red in the yellow. We'll get a little more orange in some spots. This is just a whole grouping of a forest of trees back here, if you will, that sort of outline the back of this painting. And by mixing these this way, we're getting some nice colors that could be fall. We're going to put some highlights on them after a bit too to make them look a little more as if the sun's actually shining right on some of these tips up here. But this is very, very straightforward, simple brush strokes, basically pushing up. I'm leaving room here. I've got this big tree that sort of goes above the trees behind it, but the trees that are down here are kind of out of the sun a little bit, so we're going to leave those a little darker. And but the tips up there, we're going to probably want to come back and put some brightness on them. We'll brighten them up a little bit. Mix up greens, blues, reds. I'm using Prussian blue over there with this green to get some dark down here. Down to the edge of this water over here, we're going to have some areas that look sort of like grassy areas, but another couple trees that sort of float up here. Alright, so if you look at the edge now, if you look at the top edge here, it's not a straight line, it goes up and down and up and down and has nice variation, has nice undulation to it, and changing the color, changing the height of these little trees that stick up. So I get a nice, pleasing, one artist calls it a melodic line on the top here. And I've been following this artist for the last year or more, sort of modifying my Bob Ross style slightly to see if I could get a little bit different flavor in some of the paintings. I like some of the Bob Ross tools, I like a little of the Bob Ross style, but I also know that there are other ways to paint, and so I experiment with that and I try different things, try to keep myself learning all the time, trying to find other artists that will inspire me, and you should do that too. You shouldn't get stuck with just one artist or one style. This is sort of an eclectic, I guess, style of painting to follow different artists and kind of take the best from those and that you like, and modify your painting techniques accordingly. So I have a little bank over here in the back. I'm going to get some, pick up all this brown maybe and put a line or two over here that starts looking like there's a bank back there. You can see back into those trees, but all of this is just pushing up with this filbert brush and letting the bristles sort of make whatever marks they will. And as I mix this bright red with sap green, I'm getting this interesting, some brownish red colors that show up in a lot of these kinds of trees. And okay, that's pretty good for that. I've got a tree here that's going to come up, and I got another tree there. Okay, how are we doing? That's looking pretty good. It looks like a big stand of trees back there, but it has nice variation to it so that it's not a straight line. You don't want to make these trees in a straight line. In nature, you may find them in a straight line. You may find a nice horizontal bank of trees back there, but don't paint them that way. Don't paint them that way. If you do, you sort of ruin the artistic look that you can get by painting them with some nice variation, both variation in size and shape and width and height, color. Vary everything you can think of. Okay, we have a couple of big rocks that come down over this way and some other gray rocks that come over this way, and then we have our water back here. So let me see, I think I want to maybe start putting in some of this rock. Let me get my little knife out. I'm getting this number 5 painting knife from Bob Ross, and we're going to scrape in a few rocks in this area. Once I get the color, I'm going to have to do a little mixing here. See if I can get a sort of a cream colored brown from using dark sienna and white, putting more white in it to lighten it up. A little of this ultra violet over here, and I'll get some nice shadow colors, and I can sort of change the color of it a little bit. So that's kind of the color that I want to start with over here, like right in here. Start putting some of that down, a bit more of this violet. If I can leave it marbled, I'll get some nice looking colors in there, hopefully. There's actually a couple of rocks in here that kind of overlap each other, and there's we have some shadows and some highlights, and we'll be putting those on in a minute. Run into this tree over here, go like this, and there's some others that come this way. Let me put a little more white in there, see if I can pick up a little bit of that. Actually start turning a little bit orange in some areas, see if I can put a little of this bright red in there and see if I can redden up this a little bit. The sun's starting to hit on some of these rocks. I go down here, start touching the water. Maybe some dark browns in some areas over here where this kind of out of the sun. Okay, and then there's some other rocks with some bushes on it down here. Yeah, we got enough laying in there that help us maybe look the way I want it to. So I'm just pulling in here some more of this rock that goes out this way and comes back this way. There's all kind of good stuff going on here. And here we got okay, that's enough paint to work with. If I get my brushes out now, I can start working with that. And let me see, maybe while I got this knife going, let's get some of these gray rocks. I'm going to pick up some of this midnight black And over here we have some more rocks that sort of go this way. Where'd it go? I didn't get any color out of that. Here we go. There we go. Something like this. They have a nice gray tone to them. Picked up a little of that brown. That's all right. Pick up a little more black. And throw in some rocks over here. These rocks kind of come out into the water like this. Make a nice flat connection. There's some more rocks over here. Okay, that's a good good starting point. We'll leave that in. I think maybe, I look at my original photograph, I'm going to bring this guy out a little more. He kind of sticks out about like that, goes back and in there. And there's another one that sort of juts out right here, like that. Okay, and make sure I get something on the canvas here. I didn't have anything right there. Okay. All right, so that's a very rough start to the rocks. And clean off my knife and let's get back onto our brushes here. My filbert brush. I'm going to use it and start seeing if I can finesse this mountain now a little bit with these colors I have here. To sort of give it some shapes in there and make it look like more of it's in shadow. Some dark colors in there. There we go. It's more shadowy. Has a little bank right here where that rock hits. These rocks over here have a little more of that orange in them. See if I can pick up from that. Getting a whole mixture of colors here to see if I can get a reddish. That knife gives us some nice texture, but we want this to look like there's some water going on back in there, and some dark rock in here. There's actually a little bit of an island type thing sitting there. Okay, these are brighter. Pick up some white, and we can come in here and start putting in some slightly lighter colors on this rock, hopefully. Something like that. All right. So the dark, by switching back dark and light, we end up with these nice contrasts that help us identify these rocks, where they are, where they start, where they end. On this other side over here, I've got a lot more. Actually, I got way too much paint there. I'll scrape some of that off with this brush. If I can get a little bank started out here like that. Okay, and then come back with the darker colors here and make some shadows in it. Using violet now, ultraviolet. Something like that. So mix up the colors, get these violets going in some different areas. the rock face that really faces us is darker, and if it's got the sun shining on it or getting light from the sky, it's going to be lighter. So I want to put some other highlights in, but there is something that's shadowing this rock on the left, according to the photograph, and we want to try to represent that if we can. All right, over here, got a lot of interesting paint and rocks. Sort of kind of overlap this area back here. I'm just kind of cover the canvas, get some base tone in here. Yeah. Okay, starting to get the idea that we got rocks on the left, rocks on the right. Got a very beautiful tree here that's all lit up with the sun, and it's almost a, I look at it, it's almost a cad yellow, but I think it's really a green tree. It's just got so much sunlight on it that it's it looks like a cad yellow. I'm going to get some cad yellow and sort of gray it or darken it down a little bit with some ochre. Just start in here and see if I can put this little job in. I'm going to want to change the color, pick up some of these other colors that are there. As we do this, I have some green in there in some spots. This tree just really sort of stands out. If there's any shadow at all, it needs to be on the right side because that's the sun is on the left. Big, bright. Put these paints on heavily with side of the brush. Sort of stipple them on top. Got grasses growing up over here that are bright and being hit by the sun. Since I have a lot of that brown on the canvas, I'm having trouble with picking it up, but as I put these on now, I'm just sort of pushing up, picking up some greens and some reds. I forgot my water back there. I'm going to have to come back and paint that water in, but these are just little grasses that kind of float along here, kind of growing out of the rocks. This tree is growing definitely out of the rock. And I'm just sort of hitting and missing it here, trying to get myself a nice, interesting looking tree that's not too triangular, but it does have a nice tree shape with it. Okay, so I see a lot of spots when I look at it on the camera. I see a lot of little dots here that I want to sort of fix. Inside there are probably a tree trunk or so that might show up in some spots. Let's put a little indication of that in there. Okay. One of the things we didn't do in the background here is to put in some scrapes that make it look like there's some trees and other things floating in the background. By just scraping in some vertical streaks here, you can actually make it look like there's some either dead trees or certainly trees that have white trunks on them. Not too much of that gets boring and it looks contrived. And come back and maybe or paint some of them just so they don't all just look like you just stuck them on. You want to hide the idea that you just went in and did that. So just a few little marks will sort of thin them out. All right. There's some little highlight there. I'm going to leave that for a minute, but in here we still have some greens and some bushes that have this bright sort of stand out. I'm just sort of stippling in a bush or two here with this filbert. Get some dark at the bottom of it. Put a little Prussian blue in there and see if that works. It didn't work too well. Let's put a little violet in there and see if we can darken up the bottoms of these a little bit. All right, so much for that. Let's leave that alone for a while. This water back here in this area is sort of a grayish, sort of a gray, I don't know, it's reflecting the sky, but it's has sort of a gray tone. I'm going to get my violet and black and see what I can get. Put a little white with that. See if I can get sort of a steel gray color with some purple in it back here. Maybe that will help me tell the story of this water back here. I want to pick up that green that's in these bushes. I got to paint around those. So all that back there is this sort of a grayed down color. So I'll just sort of hit it like that. Let it look like that. Put some darks in there in some spots. And in here we're going to have a very similar color, but we're going to start getting more reflections in it. We'll make sure we get these reflections in a moment, but let's get a base coat of this color, sort of tie them together. That liquid white just lightens that up, as you can see. So pick up a little more blue maybe in some of these areas, and go back and restate these rocks here in a minute, but I want to get some of this in. Violet, phthalo blue, a little black. As we come forward, we're getting a little darker as we come forward, which is should be doing, because it's usually darker in the foreground. So I'm just laying this on top of the liquid white. Wipe down the edge of my canvas here. Got paint running off the end. Okay, how are we doing here? Check this and see what we're... Okay, we've been going about 34 minutes, 35. Got a good start on this thing with water and rocks and trees. Sort of getting all one color back there for this water. But we will really darken it over here. We're going to put some more dark in it to, this is going to have a big tree that goes up the right side. It's going to offer some shadow in it. So let's see, that'll help sort of balance this heavy dark on the left side up here. All right, that's a good start for what I want to do there. Got that all covered, so I've got most of the canvas covered except this area where I've got a couple of big trees in here. But this area in the back, just want to make it not that blue. Maybe I got a little too much blue in it, but lighten it up a little bit. here, yeah. Okay. All right, it's starting to take shape. I think that water back there, I may just put a few dark shadows in it and leave it alone back there. I got some green in that. I didn't want it. Prussian blue. Go black. Make a few vertical streaks back there. The vertical streaks in water tell the viewer that that is water when you see the vertical streaks. And you can make them reflect the colors that are above. That even helps it tell the story better, even more. So usually pick up a few of those colors and pull them down back there. Shows that water's not moving too much, it's just sort of laying there. And as we get over here, we'll start reflecting more of these colors down. It's the vertical strokes that tell the story. You see these vertical strokes there and some darks here. Dark brown over here. The more I go over it like that, the more I kind of pick up this color and pull it back in it. But we'll get our big brush in a minute and go over that, and you'll be able to see we'll put the background in, or the reflection, the edge of the reflection where it separates the bank from the reflection. When we do that, you'll be able to tell what this is a lot more accurately than right now. It looks kind of like a mess right now, but we are making progress. So what helps sell that idea is the horizontal blending. And usually we take our big landscape brush here, sort of make some horizontal marks across it this way. It sort of blurs those vertical streaks so they don't look like they're all perfect. Clean it out. A little more blurriness here. And then we'll come back and put in some specific the bank. We'll put that bank in back there a little better so it'll definitely separate the reflection from the bank. All right. Let's go back and get this filbert. I like this filbert a lot. This tree, I've got a tree that sort of goes in here that stands out, and it's got a lot of same colors we've had. I'm going to change the color a little bit. I'm going to use my sap green and a little bit of alizarin instead of the bright red. Maybe a touch of my Indian yellow to see what color that gives me. So I'm getting a brown color here that using alizarin and sap green. Maybe I'll pull this bright in there to brighten it up a little. But in this area here, we've got a big tree that is sort of in here like this. And if it is the same value as what's behind it, it's not going to show up. So we got to make sure that we do something to change its value. Either it has to be darker or lighter. And I'm going to make it go kind of stick up here like this. That's going to help give us that idea that it is definitely a tree in the foreground. Put a little more detail on it and it will tell the viewer that. These areas that overlap with the same value, we're going to come back and put some highlights in there. So I'm painting a sort of a pine tree, or not sure it's a pine tree, I guess it is, here. but I'm going to have it sort of overlap these rocks and sort of stick out this way. We have a bunch of bushes and things that sort of lay on top of some of these rocks over this way. Lighten them up with some yellow highlights here. All of a sudden they'll start sticking out. Getting cad yellow, just putting cad yellow on top sort of helps show the tips of these. Something is really going on there. Sun is coming in and hitting this, and then the rest of it down here is more in shadow. There's a few spots where the sun hits on this tree, but pretty much the left side is it. And there's another tree over here. I'm going to just put in some green color now to get some base to paint on top of, but there's another big old tree over here on the right side that's even darker. So put this in, cover the canvas a little bit, and just get a little bit of this going here. We got some, this is actually some land back there with some tree trunks that you can see. And that's kind of what I want to do there, I think, right now. Highlights. Get a mid-tone and a dark tone. Okay. These rocks have a surface facing this way, so they're getting the lighter part of them. So to highlight them, we're going to have to put some shadows, vertical shadows on there that's going to make the tops of those rocks stand out. Over here I still got some things going on in the grass around these rocks. Back in here there's a lot of some land. And this is just whatever's on my brush. I'm just sort of getting some paint on the canvas so I have something to paint on top of, so I don't end up with so much dry canvas to paint on. Starting to take shape. You can see that tree in the foreground. It's about the same height as that one. I probably want to change that. I don't like to duplicate. I don't want to have clones here. We can prevent it if we think about it. So let's just make that guy a little taller. Put some darker colors on the right side of him over here to make it stand out. Yeah. So I'm just touching with this brush with some Prussian blue on it, letting it take off what it will and mix with the paint that's on the canvas. Down here we got some more darks. We're going to get into some bushes and some things over here that's between these trees and this next set of trees that goes up here. Got a big tree going up that way. And have some blues and greens in it. Be darker up here. So I'm picking up that blue that's in the canvas, blue and white. It's lightening up my paint color as usual. Got to watch that. Make sure you get it dark enough. It's got to be able to see it in front of that stuff that's behind it, and leave a few holes in there so you can actually see through them. Is always a nice idea. If you can think about it, remember to do it. There's really a couple of trees over here. There's another little one that sort of sticks up here like this. Has some really light, fluffy leaves hanging off of it. Hasn't started turning yet. But the sun is hitting on parts of it. So these are pretty nondescript things. They're just sort of abstract shapes. Darks, putting in things that look like tree branches. You got the back and look at that now, see how it looks. Okay. taking on a pretty nice flavor. Down here I'm going to have some tree trunks that sort of come down, and then we're going to hit some more grasses that land on top of these rocks down here. So in here we have a series of grasses and things that lay on top of the rock. Pushing up again, pushing up. Using quite a bit of sap green and graying it down with bright red to give me a more of a brown color. Okay, let's see now. Let's get our little script liner. The script liner is the number 2 script liner. Get some thinner in it. We're going to get some dark trunks we're going to put in this tree, and maybe paint a few trunks up the middle if we can. Get the paint thin. Add some thinner. Get it runny as possible. They even had some grayness in it. I'm going to pick up a little of this midnight black. So over here we've got some trunks that sort of stick in like this. And they actually sort of come down and go right into the ground here. Something like that. There's another one over here. Kind of connects with these. Don't make them the same width or the same distance apart. Vary them, vary the shapes, vary the size. Throw in a few more things in here that look like there's some trees going on, some other branches. Get some more thinner. When that paint won't stick, if the paint won't stick on top, you have to make the paint thinner. So you get some thinner to make the paint thinner, and when you put it down, it's going to stay on top of whatever is there. Like right in here, there's a little tree going up that's got some branches on it. We'll put something like this in there. Using this script liner helps with a lot of these fine details. There's some trunks in here that would help this tree look right. Over here I did that one already. There's some other all kind of things are growing up over here. This is sort of a wild and crazy area. Leave a few of these stick out, show through the gaps. Like that over here. Okay, we don't need a lot of this, but a little of that helps. Okay, let's see, where are we now? Getting down to these final few rocks and the rest of the water here. These rocks need to have some shadows to show you where the tops are. So I'm going to come in here and put in some vertical things like this. And I'm picking up that paint that's there, so I have to go back, wipe my brush, go back, get some more dark paint. Make sure it's darker than what's on the canvas or it won't look right. So these vertical streaks I'm making are helping to tell you that that's the side of a rock that's touching. It's got a rock above it, and I'm going to put some white on my brush, just some white, and go back and highlight the top of this again like that. And go get some more white, and then I'm going to highlight this one. Okay, so hopefully that's giving that contrast is separating those two rocks, so you can see a shadow on one and a highlight on the one below it, a little highlight on the one above it. And let this scrape off what it will. Here, I'm going to have another shadow that sort of comes in like this. And helps divide these rocks a little bit. There's a big old shadow down in here. Right in here. And there's some real dark places along the bottom of those rocks where they touch the water as well. Like that, along here. And we got some more around here on the back side of this rock. It's sort of curved and it sort of blends out into the top, and actually it does pick up some of this greeny, mossy looking stuff on the bottom. Lighten up the tops a little bit to give ourselves some more separation, contrast. Like that. A little too much. Too much there. But that highlight is what's helping separate these rocks. So you have a light color and a dark color. And I'm just using some titanium white here to sort of indicate where the tops of these rocks are, and using some of this violet to show where the bottom and shadow side is. Okay, we're getting something to look like rocks in there that have some dark shadows and connect with the water down here. Could use the knife for this. I may go back and touch them up with the knife in a minute just to see how that works. Over here we've got rocks that have some curvature to them. Okay. Yeah, we're getting a nice little bank of rocks over there. Looks pretty good. These rocks are they need to be separated from the water. So one way to do that, as you probably know, is take our knife and get a little dark roll of paint on there of some sort, and see if we can sort of just scoot along here and sort of make a straight line. It's got to be straight. If you make it angular, you're going to have problems. Picked up a little too much paint there. Over here we got a little, some straight with the knife. Put in a few things like this will help identify it as well. Having this knife with a little roll of paint on it really helps you make a sharp edge where you have a sharp edge on the top of a rock, like right here. And by just pulling down, you can leave that rough marbled texture in there. It really helps sell it, I think. Similar angles, I probably should be careful not to have the same angle on every rock. This one goes like that, this one's almost like that, this one is, these two are almost duplicates of each other, so I'm going to change this. Make it go back more like that. Here we go. And these are kind of flat and vertical. Okay. Now, the other area we needed to break is back in here. Need to have a little bit of rock definition at the bottom of these. So I'll just take some dark color. I'm using dark Van Dyke. It's got a little bit of the burnt or dark sienna in it. Just sort of making a little row back here that sort of stands out. It's actually a little island type thing that was sitting here. Something like that. I did pull down some of these reflections already, but I want to pull a little bit more here. Pick up some of this brown and pull it down. So this bright yellow we can pull it down even a little more. Over here I haven't done anything yet with the reflections. It's the wrong color for that. Pull down, pull down. You can always go back and kind of restate these fairly easily by just putting in some of the natural color that you had on something close to the color you had up above. Put a few trees in here. Something like this. Over here we want it to sort of follow the grays of the rocks. Like this. Over here we were actually getting in some very dark colors over here, and the photograph had some very dark colors. I'm just going to pull down some purples and like that. Get some dark in there, more dark. Maybe a little of this blue will really darken it up. Yeah. Okay, so we're getting got all those little brush strokes in there, and they don't look good, right? So what do we do about it? Let's get them out of there. Get our big old landscape brush and start doing some horizontal movement. Very light, wipe the brush, swipe again, wipe the brush. Wipe the brush, make sure you wipe it out or you'll carry colors back in there that you don't want to carry back in. So these are all, wipe the brush every time. Take one swipe, wipe the brush. Get the paint out of it. Like that. Down here we're going to do the same thing. One swipe, wipe the brush. A couple of swipes over here. All of a sudden, we've just about got a finished painting here, folks. Got some nice, good reflections in there. Let me see. We can see the change in the water. We can see the background very nicely. Those trees on the right stick out. You can see the trunks in there. I think there's just a couple highlights on this left side that I want to put in that maybe will help identify these rocks slightly. What color am I going to use is the question. Try some ochre and grab me some white and stick in there and see if I can get a color that looks like the sun shining off of that rock, off of these rocks on the left. I don't want to make this stand out too much, but I do want to get some other colors in here. That's probably too much. Let's darken it down a little bit. Like that. There we go. Here we got some colors in here that are sort of being hit by the sun in some areas. Just a little bit, not much. All right, does that help it? Does that hurt it? Looks like there's a little sun popping off of those rocks back there. since the sun's coming this way, it's going to hit the tops of these rocks and some spots. It's going to hit that tree. It's going to hit this tree. It's going to hit these rocks on the right. What else do I need to do to this? These trees over here look like they've sort of been glued on, so we want to make them part of the ground. A good way to do that is take a clean, dry brush and just come over here and just touch the bottoms. Just push up, mix the paint together so you can't really tell where they start, where they end. Soft edges. Leave some grasses out there around them. Maybe we'll put a few more spots of grass in there. I think might be all we need to do to this thing. Probably could play around with it for another hour, but I don't think I want to do that. I'm going to get a little of this reflection down here. I didn't quite get that tree reflected. Doesn't have to be perfect reflections, but you need to have some of those colors showing down here. This green that's on this side, I probably could have a little more of it over here. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so what have I done? I've messed it up again by all these vertical strokes, but the vertical strokes are what telling you what's going on. So we get our 1-inch landscape brush and take a swipe. Wipe the brush, take a swipe, wipe the brush. Again, okay. That, to me, looks like it's ready to go. The only thing I know that Bob Ross always does that I kind of like to do sometimes is to come back and put in this little layer of white across those reflections. When you have these reflections, it's always nice to, something that runs across the reflection helps sell it again. So if you come in here with a liquid white on your knife and just sort of make a streak or two back here, maybe one there, take a few in here, just put some marks on the canvas that look like there's some water ripples going on, maybe even a light one back there too. Don't have to do a lot of this, but whatever you do helps those reflections stand out a little more. Okay, I hope you can see that. I hope it's showing up well. All right, I think I'm going to call a halt to this and zoom back and tell you this is the painting we're going to do in our September 18th oil painting class, and give it a try. If you got some time, try it. If you're coming to my class, I'll be looking forward to painting this again for you in the class. And if you're not able to come to class, give it a try, and hope you enjoy it. Until I see you again, this is Larry Hamilton signing off, saying thanks for watching. So long.